Attention! Full version link in the comments. The city only becomes beautiful after midnight. The yellow lights from the street lamps cast crooked shadows on the empty sidewalks. The silence has a strange weight, as if everything were waiting for something that never comes. It is in this emptiness that I spend my night sitting behind a cold counter, staring at the cameras, listening to the clock on the wall and the static of the old radio that I insist on keeping on. My name is Darren. I'm 45 years old, a night watchman in a commercial building downtown. Divorced, with a 16-year-old daughter I see from time to time, and a routine that has become more of a refuge than a punishment. The truth is, I've grown accustomed to loneliness. The first time I saw Mitchell was 48, but his eyes carried a youthfulness that belied the weariness of the rest of his body. He was leaning against the gate of the building next door, smoking a cigarette with his shirt rolled up at the elbows and his eyes fixed on the sky as if searching for answers in the stars. He was new around there. He had a firm body, a well-groomed beard, and gray hair at the corners of his mouth. He had the air of someone who didn't talk much but thought a lot. In the early days, we just exchanged nods. A lift of the chin, a brief wave of the hand. Until one cold morning, he crossed the street with a coffee in his hand and said, "I thought you might want one." I accepted. And so it began. On the following nights, Mitchell started crossing the street around 2 in the morning. We would sit on the steps of the building, share cigarettes, and talk quietly. He told me he had served in the army, that he was married, but things had been cold for a long time. I didn't ask any more questions. He never asked about my life either, but he listened when I spoke, and that was rare. We laughed about silly things, complained about the cold, commented on the drunks passing by, but there was something in the silences, in the long looks, in the way he sometimes touched my arm when he laughed, in the way his eyes lingered a little too long on my lips when I lit a cigarette. That Tuesday morning, it was raining hard. Mitchell showed up soaked, without a coat, his hair stuck to his forehead. I let him in. He took off his wet shoes, hung his shirt on the back of a chair, and sat on the sofa in the lobby wearing only a t-shirt, his chest slightly visible under the clinging fabric. I couldn't stand being in there anymore. It feels like the walls are talking, you know. I nodded. I knew. I made some coffee. Our hands touched when I handed him the mug. He didn't pull away. He stayed there, his fingers on mine, firm. And for a second, just a second, I didn't let go either. He was the one who looked away first. Later, on my way back from my rounds, I passed him again. He was sitting on the couch, his eyes half closed, breathing calmly. But when I approached him, he opened his eyes and said, almost in a whisper, "You're the only good thing about these early mornings, Darren." I felt something tighten in my chest, and something else awaken deeper inside. I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at him, waiting. He didn't say anything else. Neither did I. But that night, even after my shift ended, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with my eyes open, reliving every gesture, every word, every touch of Mitchell. And my body, it still burned, as if something had been lit and didn't want to go out. The next night, everything seemed the same, but nothing was. The wind cut through the air as usual, the clock ticked irritatingly, the empty corridors still echoed my footsteps. But inside me, something was different. A restlessness. A warmth that didn't match the July cold. I found myself looking at the security camera more than usual, waiting. And when I saw his silhouette crossing the street, with a hood thrown over his shoulders and a cup of coffee in his hand, my heart receded as if I were 20 years old again. Mitchell came in without saying a word. He took off his hood, ran his hand through his hair, wet from the drizzle, and handed me the coffee. "I thought you might want it again." "Thanks," I said, but my voice came out lower than usual. We sat on the same step as always. No one said anything for a while. Only the sound of the sleeping city surrounded us. His shoulder touched mine lightly. I could have moved away, but I didn't want to. "You look tired," he said. "I didn't sleep well." "Me neither." Silence. He turned his face toward me. His eyes were dark, moist. I wanted to ask him what he was thinking, but I didn't have the courage. Then he said, There's something different between us, isn't there? My throat tightened, but I shook my head slowly. I don't know what it is, he continued, but when I'm here with you, everything seems lighter, less confusing. Even my head is a little quieter. I felt my eyes sting. That sentence wasn't just about me. It was about him too. About what he had been keeping inside for years. Maybe what I had also been keeping inside without a name. He put his empty mug on the floor and turned his face towards me. Can I ask you something? I nodded. Have you ever thought about another man? The question hit me like a punch in the stomach, but not because I was surprised it was because of the courage it took for him to say it out loud. Yes, I replied after a few seconds. Me too, he whispered, but I've never told anyone. His knee was touching mine. His breath was so close. The air between us seemed thicker and hot. He looked at my mouth. It wasn't a quick glance. I felt it, and I wanted it. I moved my face a little closer, expecting him to pull away, but Mitchell didn't move. On the contrary, his eyes closed, as if waiting for something inevitable. When our lips touched, it wasn't urgent. It was tense, filled with fear, desire, and a strange peace. The kiss was short, but it was real. And when we pulled apart, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, motionless. Two middle-aged men, shells hardened by years of silence, beginning to crack. Then he said goodbye and left. The next night, I didn't know if Mitchell would come. I thought he would rethink everything, that fear would speak louder, that pretending would be easier than feeling. But when the clock struck 2:12, and I heard his footsteps crossing the street, I realized I wasn't alone in this. He came in with his hood thrown back, his face serious. But when he saw me, he smiled a small, almost shy smile, and it was real. Hi, he said. Hi, I replied. I thought maybe you would disappear, he finished, coming closer. I did think that, but I've run away too much in my life. I don't want to run from myself anymore. We stood facing each other, the sound of rain tapping softly outside, the radio crackling in the background, and for a few seconds, the whole world seemed to have stopped just to give us that moment. Mitchell sat down on the same couch as the other night. I took 2 mugs out of the cupboard and made coffee. When I came back, he was watching me as if he were storing an image in his memory. Did you know? He asked, holding the cup with both hands. Know what? That I was trying to find myself in you, from the beginning. I sat down next to him, slowly. No, but now it all makes sense. The days passed. The conversations grew longer. The laughter, more relaxed, and the silences, more meaningful. Mitchell started bringing cookies, blankets, books, simple things, but they filled my nights in ways I didn't know needed filling. One day, he showed me an old photograph and his father, in black and white, in front of a pickup truck. My father taught me to be strong, not to show weakness. And now? I asked. He looked at me. Now I'm learning that feeling isn't weakness, it's courage. It was on a clear night that everything changed for good. We were on the sidewalk looking at the stars. There was no traffic, no voices, no noise. Mitchell had his arm around me, and suddenly he said, I never imagined myself in love with a man. My heart raced. What now? He smiled. Now I imagine myself with you. That night, he didn't go back to his building. We stayed together, inside my lobby, with the lights off and the world outside silent. No rush, no fear, no words. It was the first time we touched each other with everything we felt with surrender, care, and truth. It wasn't just desire, it was love. A love that was born in silence, grew in the early hours of the morning, and revealed itself completely. After that night, everything in me changed. The world was still the same outside, the city sleeping, the cold lights in the hallways, the distant noise of traffic, but inside, I felt something else. A slight warmth, a tranquility that I didn't think I deserved anymore, as if something inside me had finally found a place to rest. Mitchell started coming every morning. Sometimes he brought flowers stolen from the corner flower bed, sometimes just silence, and that was enough. We would lie down on the old sofa in the lobby, sometimes just lying there, hands intertwined, listening to the sounds of the night. Other times, he would tell me stories from his childhood or make me laugh with some army memory. It was never about grand gestures. It was about presence. I started living for those hours. I would wake up counting down the time until my shift started. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. But the real world, the one outside the early hours of the morning, would soon start knocking on the door. One early morning, shortly after 2 a.m, the rain was falling lightly, bringing with it a cold wind that made the glass doors of the lobby shake. Mitchell had just arrived. We were sitting side by side on the couch, drinking hot coffee in silence. The connection between us was made of calm, of looks that needed no words. That's when we heard the door slam. We both turned around, surprised. A woman came in, completely soaked, her gaze sharp and tense, her shoulders stiff, as if she were preparing for a confrontation. "I came to see who this woman is that you're cheating on me with, Mitchell." Her words came fast and sharp. Mitchell jumped up, visibly taken by surprise. "What are you talking about? I'm working, Laura. You're embarrassing me at work." She looked around, as if expecting to catch some woman hiding. She scanned the lobby with her eyes, then looked directly at me and hesitated. The silence between us stretched out. It was obvious. She had no idea that I was the man her husband was having an affair with. Her face changed. Fury gave way to confusion. Confusion turned to embarrassment. She adjusted her purse on her shoulder, looked away from Mitchell, and said in a lower voice, "I'm sorry. I was mistaken." And she left, without another word, without a response. Mitchell stood in the middle of the lobby for a few seconds, as if he were still processing what had just happened. "She had no idea," he said, more to himself than to me. "What now?" I asked quietly. He sat down slowly. "Now I don't know. I just know I'm tired of running." We remained silent. The rain continued outside, as if slowly washing the city clean. Mitchell didn't show up in the following days. And the silence of the early morning, which had once calmed me, now only echoed his absence. 5 days passed. It was almost 3 a.m. when I heard his footsteps crossing the street. He was different, more dejected, more genuine. He stopped at the door. He looked at me and said, "I thought I could erase what we had, but erasing you would be erasing the most alive part of me." He came in. He sat down on the sofa, and without saying another word, he reached out his hand toward me. I took it. And there, in the middle of the night, between pain and courage, 2 middle-aged men chose what they may never have chosen before: the right to love. That night, after Laura left, we sat in silence for a long time. But when his eyes met mine, we understood everything without saying a word. We gave ourselves to each other again. Not in a hurry, not afraid, but with truth, with care, with everything we had carried for so long silently inside our chests. Since then, it has been like this. Nights full of silence, but also of presence, of touch, of affection, of a connection I never thought I could experience, let alone with another man. To be honest, I never imagined getting involved like this. But I confess, I'm loving it. And maybe that's the biggest shock and also the greatest gift. If you enjoyed this brief adventure, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories like this one here. Kisses, and see you soon.